Hello everyone, welcome to my January 2025 monthly wrap up. I read 10 books this month. Without further ado, let's just dive right in. So the first book I read, I actually finished in one go on a long bike ride. It is called Metamorphosis. It's a 3-hour audiobook, and because I listened to it at 1.5, I was able to just finish it during a long ride. This book was written in the early 1900s, and the concept about it is really weird. It's chronicling a man who slowly transforms into a cockroach. And yes, I know that sounds really weird, but I was inspired to read this because my husband and I were in Prague over the Christmas holiday season. We saw a statue by this author, Franz Kafka, like a self-portrait, and it was just so weird and it intrigued me, and so I decided to read it. I think this is his most popular book. Anyways, I actually really enjoyed the book. I think I gave it a 4.5 overall. It's just also kind of like depressing a little bit. Like, I was kind of feeling emotional after reading it because you kind of realize that really all love is conditional, and like what amount of burden on a family is just too much is like the theme of it, and it kind of touches on some really hard truths that are there. I did some research afterwards because I was just so like kind of sad by it, and apparently Franz Kafka would like take it out and read it at parties and stuff, and he saw this as like a comedy. So I guess I could see some comedic elements, but I was more thinking of like how dark and disturbing this is, but it's also kind of reality. So anyways, really interesting book. Definitely check it out if you want to be a little bit depressed about love. Next, I read a book that one of you guys recommended, You Again, and this was super cute. This is a Harry Met Sally retelling, but with role reversal. So for those of you who are familiar with When Harry Met Sally, it's one of my personal favorite rom-coms. They just switched the roles and it's a modern take. I restarted this on New Year's Eve, which seemed fitting because this When Harry Met Sally, for those of you familiar with the film, it kind of centers around New Year's Eve, and this book does as well. So definitely recommend it around that season. It definitely was a bit crass at points, but it was still cute. I gave it a 4.5. I thought the author was really talented in how she was able to tell the story. Plus, I just love a good friends to lovers. That's my favorite romance trope, so I really enjoyed that book. Next, I read a rom-com that was so cute. I loved it, and I did not anticipate loving it based on the title, but it's called The Ex Vows. I read this author's other book, You with a View, and I gave it a 4-star last year. And so I was curious to try another one of her books, and this one was even better than the last one. I ended up giving a 4.75. It's a second chance romance, but it's done really well, and it takes place over their best friend's wedding. I really liked this book because the characters felt so real, and it was messy. It just felt like a very realistic love story. I also think it really just captures that period of time in like your 20s where friendships that you've had from college and high school, and like you're all moving around and forming your own lives, and just did a really good job capturing that period of time in life. And so yeah, I really enjoyed that and definitely recommend. Next, I read the rest of the Beartown series. I read the second book, Us Against You, and then I read the last book, The Winners. And Us Against You, I really enjoyed. I gave that a 5-star, just an easy 5-star. Frederick Bachman is just such a talented author. The way he's able to capture the characters and the small town, that it feels just so real. It's incredible, and just little nuanced observations about life and stuff he's just able to do in such a simplistic way that if you haven't picked up a Frederick Bachman, you guys just got to do it. You have to start with the first book in this series if you're going to do this series, Beartown. I actually got my husband to read that, and he's almost done with it, and he actually loves it, which I actually did not anticipate him loving it as much, but I just think it just shows like how talented of an author he is. So anyways, if you haven't picked up this series, definitely recommend. I did read the third book in the series, the last one, The Winners, and I did enjoy this as well. I will say I think I enjoyed this one slightly less. I do think part of that was that I took like a whole like week and a half gap in the middle of reading the book because I went and visited some family. I do think that kind of took me out of the world. I do think these books are best read if you can do it all at once rather than taking a big chunk of a break in it. But Overall, really enjoyed this series. I just felt like the last one, The Winners, to me felt a little bit like rushed, the wrapping up. Like it did a long build up, and the wrapping up just felt rushed. But it's still Frederick Bachman, and I think he's brilliant. So still a really well done book. Just I enjoyed it slightly less than the other two in the series. Bachman also does a really great job of showing characters that aren't perfect, and so they feel more real as well. I think it's really nice when an author can capture the dimensions and don't stick with like a black and white, like someone's good, someone's bad. The reality is people have good aspects and bad aspects and things that maybe would be ideal to change, but that's just makes them more real. And I think I love seeing that in books, and he does a brilliant job with that. All right, next book I read is a book called Next of Kin, and this is a new to me author, I believe. And the reason I picked up this book is that her second book, I believe, in this series is about a couple that renovates a camper van together. And for those that don't know, if you don't follow me on my other channel, Pursuing Mountains, my husband and I renovated a camper van. And so I was just interested and intrigued by that concept. We're actually going to be redoing a lot of things in our camper van here real soon. And so it's kind of on my mind. But anyways, I wanted to get through this book first. And this book was just okay to me. I ended up giving it 3 stars, mostly because it was cringy, but I really liked the concept of the story. It's kind of this forced proximity trope. This man and woman kind of are forced to in the same living environment because they need to have guardianship of their siblings. And in order to do that, they had to kind of join forces in order to meet all the requirements by the Department of Child Welfare or whatever. Really interesting, like, that part of it, but the rest of it was just kind of cringily done. There's a certain romance writing style, and I feel like I can't even describe it well. It just feels like cringy and a bit smutty, and this had that. Next was a nonfiction book I read called Sociopath, and I had been on hold at this for my library for so long. Guys, the most of the books I read are from the library. I know that's very different than a lot of YouTube, booktube channels, but I am a little bit cheap and I don't like to have excessive stuff. So most of my books come from the library. Anyway, Sociopath, the memoir, was really interesting because it's written by a sociopath. And you kind of get an inside view of her, like how she discovered she was a sociopath, and then her eventual like digging into this and eventually becoming a therapist to people who are sociopaths. It's very interesting, kind of understanding the mentality. You kind of learn about kind of this concept she talks about of like building up in your brain this like need to do bad things, essentially, to just cut through the apathy that sociopaths have. So sociopaths, like, they just feel nothingness. Like, they don't feel fear, they don't feel regret, they don't feel these things, but they can observe it in other people. And sometimes that apathy and not being able to connect those together builds up, she describes it, into a point where she just needs to like lash out. And that's where like the sociopathic urges and stuff come from. And so that part was super interesting, but I just wonder if she kind of painted a picture that would make her be a more likable person, was what I was wondering. So I just don't know if I buy everything as being the full truth, but I did think it was overall interesting. And I think if you want to understand kind of the mind and mentality of a sociopath, it's definitely one to check out. Next, I read a book called In the Weeds. I read this one because I heard that the 4th book in the series was really good. I read the first one last year, so I'm kind of just deciding to slowly push my way through getting to the 4th book, which according to a lot of people's year-end wrap-ups was really good. It's just kind of a quick, fast romance in a small town. Definitely has some cringy elements, but I kind of went into it with fairly low expectations. I gave it a 3 stars overall, but I'm hoping that when I get to the 4th book, it'll be good. And these are just quick, like no brain power, fast reads. So I don't feel like I'm investing a lot of mental energy into this series. But hopefully the 4th one's worth it. So the next 2 books are mystery thrillers. My husband and I really like listening to mystery thrillers on long road trips because they're just so bingeable and it makes the car ride just go so much quicker. The first one we read was called Do Not Disturb, and this is by Frida McFadden. And oh my goodness, this was interesting. It has all of what you really want in a mystery thriller. You're on the edge of the seat. You want to keep binging it. It's about a woman who kills her husband and seeks refuge as she's trying to escape during a storm in a rundown hotel. And it's got a lot of like psychopath vibes if you've seen that movie. It really has what you want in a mystery thriller. So definitely recommend that if you're looking for a mystery thriller. The next book I read was called That's Not My Name. And the concept of this book really intrigued me. It is about a teenage girl who has amnesia, and she's found by the police like in a ditch with like no memory of herself. She doesn't even know her name. And then she goes and gets help, and somebody comes there saying that he's missing his daughter. So she goes and lives in this like little fishing cabin with him because supposedly his house is being remodeled. And the story goes from there. Honestly, it was super intriguing. You're on the edge of your seat the whole time. However, I will say it was a little bit more straightforward. Like, it definitely was not subtle. You kind of knew where the story was going. So it almost felt a little bit more like true crime-y than like mystery thriller, if that makes sense. Overall, it was still really entertaining. Even though you could kind of see the direction it was going, I gave it a 4-star. And that's it, guys. Those are the 10 books I read this month. Let me know if any of these ones sound intriguing to you, and let me know if you have any book recommendations. Always looking for some more, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks. Bye.